Good morning, everybody. Did you miss us? No, you didn't. You didn't even know we were gone. We had a great week in New Orleans, and it was beautiful. We caught the first part of Mardi Gras, and it was super, and it was a dynamic, wonderful, and historic week for all of New Thought, and especially for religious science of mind. We are now Center for Spiritual Living, and we have joined together and in a very beautiful and wonderful way. And our purpose is to reach out to 100 million people before the end of this century and let them know what we are, who we are, and what we're doing. A different approach. Why? Because we are people who lead people to people, not to us. We are here to wake people up to the reality of truth and unfold from that reality. Everyone say, I give my mind a positive purpose. That's our lesson this morning, and the evolution of this lesson in your life is important to me, primarily because every Sunday when we give a lesson, it's important to me that you walk out of here better than you were when you walked in here, that you can leave with something that will allow you to move through your week in a positive and wonderful way. I heard a great story of change for the better. A man goes to confessional in the Catholic Church. He hadn't been in a long time, and the priest greets himself, and he said, hey, Father, this is wonderful. Said, it's been a long time since I've been here. This is great. Said, you've got cigars and beer on tap and wine, and this is just chocolate, all this stuff in here, and a big massage chair and everything else. The priest said, you're on the wrong side. Yes, well, if you're not Catholic, that probably didn't mean anything to you. Anyhow, the challenge we have is to know, everyone say, I'm always on the right side. I always discover what I need to discover when I need to discover it. Now, our challenge is to not be void of the experience that's in front of us, but to honor it, embrace it, know it is what we are here to move through and be unmoved by it no matter what is going on, because wherever we have been, it has led us to now, and if we can celebrate now, we can turn a negative yesterday into a positive yesterday. Why? Because our launching pad into our tomorrow is absolutely beautiful. As we have just returned from the 2012 Spiritual Living Convention, we have allowed ourselves to take two different cultures, teaching the same thing, but coming together and discovering how it can be new. And this is the same thing in your own life. You're constantly affirming the new, and when the new shows up, you need to blend it with the wisdom from the old so that you move forward, void of the limitation, doubt, fear, and mistakes of yesterday. How many know that you're wiser now than you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago? Okay. How many can remember when you thought you knew it all and suddenly woke up and realized you didn't? And that becomes what? Either something you want to run from, or you can allow yourself to be teachable and embrace. Last week was a great week. There were many great things that are now underway. And the joy of this is the realization that we are a mighty moving power of God in this thing called life. And we don't need rules and regulations and dogmas and creeds and ceremonies in order to practice what Emerson told us we are, and the truth of what we are back in the 1800s when he said your religion is what you're doing with yourself 24 hours a day. It's not where you spend an hour on Sunday. Your religion should be inclusive, not just tolerant. Your religion should embrace everyone, everywhere, and know that you know the truth of them, whether they do or not, and what are you going to do? Greet them at the level of what they know or at the level of what you know? If you know more every day and you let what you know greet the world around you will change for the better. The excuses for not having or not doing or not being becomes the I can mind in action. When Jesus was walking down the road and he saw the man in the ditch, he saw someone there with an I can't mind, and so he moved forward. He moved forward. Why? Because Jesus woke him up to a great idea. He said, pick up your bed and walk. He didn't say, let's analyze how you got in the ditch. He said, let's go forward. Let's develop a new concept and let the new concept take the steps you need to take to move you from where you are to where you can be. Everyone say, turn to the person next to you and say, you gotta trust your stuff. Okay. How many knew about this principle that we teach here a while before you learned to trust it? Where you learn to let go and let the beautiful happen. Let go and let God. Stop trying to make God or beg God or beseech God, but let God, because the power within you that knows what to do and how to do it will do anything you let it do, except it won't make 2 + 2 5, but that comes by way of intelligence and understanding that everything is operating under law, as we're discovering in all of our classes. You see, simplicity is the power that motivates the wonderful in us as us to become the beautiful as our life. It is the simplicity of knowing that we are what we're looking for, and all we have to do is learn how to direct it from the definition that arrives in our own consciousness by way of study and classes. Every teacher needs a teacher. Every student. I think this is the most beautiful thing about this teaching is no matter how much you know, there's still a wonderful class you can take and wake up to a clearer knowing. I was working on my lesson yesterday, and I had the TV on, and there was a golf tournament on, and I'm watching it. I heard one of the golfers. How many remember Ben Hogan? How many remember Ben Hogan? Ben Hogan was one of the greatest golfers that ever lived, and wherever they were playing, they had a statue of Ben Hogan there. And he was talking about, one of the people they were interviewing were talking about when they met Ben Hogan for the first time. He went to Fort Worth, Texas to meet Ben Hogan, I think, who was quite elderly at the time. And he wanted to discover the secret that Ben Hogan might have to win the U.S. Open. And so he sat down with Ben Hogan, and one of the last things he asked him was, tell me the secret. Tell me the secret of winning the U.S. Open. And Ben Hogan said, here's the secret. Shoot the lowest score. Okay. How many know you got the secret to the success you're looking for, but you may not be paying attention to it? That you know there's something healthier, happier, better, clearer, more powerful than the way you have been. You know, it's the idea, as Einstein said, if you keep thinking the same way, you're going to keep having the same experience. And insanity is trying to do something new with the same old attitude, the same old consciousness, and the same old definition. Because our self-definition is what determines our future, and this is why we know, with all thy getting, get thee what? Understanding the truth of you, as Jesus taught 2,000 years ago, our Father. This power is within everyone. It is everyone, and every child that's born on this planet is the Christ child. Every child. There's no such thing as illegitimate birth. Every child that's born is the Christ child. Phil Necro was a wonderful pitcher in baseball. He's also the manager, of some very successful baseball teams. And one day when he was still a pitcher, he was concerned because his father was in a coma and had been in a coma for some time. His mother, when he was pitching a game, he pitched a perfect game one day. His mother was sitting in the hospital room with his father, who was in a coma, and she had a phone up to her ear that was connected to the broadcast booth where they were announcing the game over the radio. She couldn't get the radio station it was on, so she was listening over the phone, and they knew she was. And she was describing the game to her husband, who was in a coma, the father of Phil Necro. The mother was on the phone. She was hearing the game. She was describing it to her husband. All of a sudden, in the 7th inning, she was describing the game but wasn't paying attention to her husband, as I said, had been in a coma for some time. and she looked at the bed, and he was sitting up smiling, and he said, "He's playing a hell of a game, isn't he?" I always tell my ministers, our wonderful ministers here, and our two wonderful chaplains that are here with Washington Hospital is Reverend Harriet and of course Reverend Bob. And I tell all of our practitioners and all of our ministers and anyone that I see that goes to visit anyone in the hospital they say has a coma, I always tell them, pay attention to what you're saying. One of our dear members who's not here this morning, and she's gave me permission to tell you this before we went over to see her, is Shirley. She's up here in Hayward at Kaiser. And I walked in, and I left a Creed of Thought magazine, and I kissed her on the forehead, and I leaned down and gave her a spiritual mind treatment in her ear. And she was out cold. They said she was in a coma. Carol Jean, our office manager, was with me, and we both joined in treatment for Shirley, and we left. About 3 weeks later, Shirley's walking in the front door on Sunday morning, and I greeted her and said, "It's wonderful to see you." And I said, "I bet you can't remember when I saw you last."